Bueno, pues muchas gracias a todos por vuestra paciencia. Está siendo una sesión muy larga, pero creo que merece la pena extendernos un poco más y poder escuchar una conversación entre nuestros tres participantes de hoy y los dos relatores que han coincidido en esta sesión, producto de fusionar la que teníamos previsto el viernes por la mañana y el jueves por la tarde. Así que esto ha sido una sesión extra, pero nos permite acabar el Congreso unas horas antes y dedicar mañana a las visitas que estaban previstas. So now we are going to spend some time trying to start a conversation among you five. And I will start by asking P.Buchanan on the left-hand side of the group to give a short. I have to ask you to be very, very schematic in your judgments. So you have to use very few words, almost sound bites. Give me an opinion of the three presentations.
Well, they're very different in as much as we've got kind of two firecrackers with lots of ideas coming out, and somebody who's kind of got this steady evolution of ideas. I mean, that's one of the big differences. But that leads on to other questions. I mean, I think that Björk's end that architects change fiction into fact is a very nice thing to say. But I was thinking all the time during the presentation of Vinny, is that if he hadn't already produced fact, some of that stuff would be crazy. You know, we'd be sitting in this audience saying, this guy's nuts. Except that he's done things which were nuts, and he's built them, and they work. And so one gets attracted. But what was in my mind then, looking at these things, is that Björk said that, we can make dreams reality. And I think one of the problems of sustainability is that they've looked too much at the negatives, what we can't do, what we can't do. We haven't looked at the dreams that tackling these problems could make possible. And I was just curious, the three of you, what your utopias were. And utopia in terms of how we relate to the world, how we should be relating to nature, how we should be relating to each other, a sense of wonder, a sense of opening your heart to the world. I was just curious, because at the moment you're responding to particular projects. Well, Winnie's got a research problem, ongoing, as has D.Eberle, but your thing seems to be a response to particular situations, but behind every architect situation is a kind of ideal world, a utopia. And I'm sure that you would all have utopias of a different way of living and relating, and I'm just curious what that would be.
But before the answer, I'll ask Vicente, perhaps you can use English so that we can, because they don't have translation.
Sí.
So we keep English as the...
A mí me gustaría más que hacer unas preguntas.
Pero te estoy pidiendo que hables en inglés.
¿Perdona?
Te estoy pidiendo que hables en inglés para que te entiendan.
Anda.
Ten en cuenta que es que ellos no tienen ahora
creo
los
que sea
cascos.
capaz de expresarme con...
Por favor, Vicente, es claro que sí.
No.
Venga.
No, yo...
Ok. Yo traduzco.
Sí. No. Déjame hablar en español, hombre.
Bien, de acuerdo. Te traduciremos de forma sucesiva, ya que ahora...
Venga. Pienso que en conjunto el Congreso, para mí en particular, más que despertarme preguntas, me ha dado respuestas. ¿Quieres decir esto?
Sí. Not judging just these performances, but the whole of the Congress, he seems to have collected not questions but answers.
Sí, quiero decir, todo, claro está, en la arquitectura está relacionado con el sistema económico, con el sistema capitalista, ¿no? Y como le ha ocurrido al sistema en otros aspectos, hubo un momento en que la demanda mandaba, la oferta mandaba, era la dictadura de la oferta, ¿no? Cuando Ford hizo el Ford T, la fabricación en serie, ofrecía el coche diciendo pueden pedir cualquier color, pero siempre que sea negro, ¿no? La oferta mandaba. Los políticos mandaban. ofrecían el marxismo, el anarquismo, el liberalismo, y la gente votaba de acuerdo con propuestas firmes, ¿no? Esta, digamos que es, en general, lo que ha ocurrido, incluso con el prêt-à-porter, cuando Pierre Cardin lo introdujo en Francia, pues la gente se ponía trajes iguales unos y otros. Bueno, esta fue una fase en la que la demanda fue la que imperaba en el mundo del mercado.
Substantially, of course, architecture depends on the economic system, and for the last decades, it's been an economy of offer. Go on.
Bueno. Pero bueno, el consumidor fue poco a poco, en lo que se llamó capitalismo de consumo, aprendiendo mucho del mercado, comparando productos, haciéndose más escéptico, como se hizo más escéptico respecto a los políticos, como se hizo más escéptico respecto a las doctrinas, etcétera, etcétera, ¿no? Y poco a poco reclamó que los productos fueran más personalizados, ¿no? Y empezó a ganar terreno, a hacer a la publicidad reinventarse, hacer a la fabricación personalizar la oferta y permitir el diseño individual, etcétera, etcétera, ¿no?
But now the consumer is king, so demand is more important than offer, both in the economic and the political realm.
Bien, yo creo que la arquitectura ha seguido el mismo camino, ¿no? Desde la dictadura del estilo internacional, esto que nos ha explicado Viaje, de todo el mismo modelo para cualquier cultura, de cualquier país, cualquier clima, se ha pasado esta cosa de reclamar lo propio como consecuencia de eso, de amar la cultura particular. Lo paralelo a la personalización ha sido la demanda de una diferenciación, ¿no? Y de ahí pues, las grandes diferencias ahora en los proyectos arquitectónicos.
So architecture has followed a similar path, and whereas international style was responding to this economy of offer, now, on the contrary, consumers demand different things, and architecture it can be so varied as you have shown in your presentations.
Sí. Yo quería, porque lo he contado alguna vez estos días respecto a la dictadura de la oferta, una anécdota que viví en casa de Sáenz de Oiza, y es que llamaban los habitantes del ruedo de la M30 y protestaban que si habían unas grietas o unas goteras y tal. Y durante el tiempo que yo estuve allí llamaron 2 veces, ¿no? Llamaron 2 veces. Y la tercera vez llamó él a alguien de su equipo y dijo, ¿pero qué está pasando? Dice, que la gente está diciendo que no puede vivir aquí. Y él dijo, pues que se jodan y aprendan a vivir. Sí.
He's telling a story about the Spanish master, Sáenz de Oiza, that when people complain about cracks and different deficiencies in their dwellings, he said that he called his office, and in his office answered to him, people complain that they cannot live here. And he said, well, let them learn to live there. Whatever.
Bueno, creo...
So, as an example of the dictatorship of the architect, that imposes his will on on people instead of listening to them and responding as you have done.
Y ya por terminar, hay un segundo factor que también me lo ha respondido el Congreso, y es que toda la atmósfera tecnológica y ecológica y demás ha solicitado a la arquitectura una adaptación al medio, ¿no? Una evolución darwinista, digamos, ¿no? Y de ese modo también ha configurado el carácter de los edificios, su clase de estética y su servicio social, ¿no? Como también hemos visto en la conferencia anterior.
So architecture has indeed adapted itself to the environment, both to the social and to, you are getting translation, where we may not need it anymore. So now, returning after the reflections of Vicente Verdú, not just on your presentations, but on the whole of this event, I would now turn to you and would like to know your opinion as an architect, and also as a teacher who has been so long involved in the ETH, probably the best architecture school in Europe. How can you value what you have seen in this afternoon?
In this afternoon, I think the I experienced in my thinking very nice and interesting and inspiring presentations. But the overall discussion, on this field is still missing. That we have a common understanding of where is the situation now. And sure, there are different situations in different countries, but overall, I'm one of the guys who believe in Europe very much and who believes in this planet very much, and I think it is very necessary that we develop global understandings, global things which we accept on. That's still what I'm sometimes missing in our discussion. But first of all, it was a great pleasure to hear you both. Very easy, inspiring. Yeah, that's what I want.
No, I was expecting you to perhaps mention the more dreamlike character of both your presentations that they try to make the dreams true, but at the same time, sometimes fly over the more, say, scientific and precise pedagogical presentation of buildings that you have. There was a great contrast. That was my feeling.
But that I did this all my lifetime. I speak about facts. And that's what I do, and that's what I know, that's what I can. And if others want to speak about dreams, they shall speak about dreams. It's also nice.
So, Winnie, facts and dreams. Now, Winnie, you have to answer that. Facts and dreams. What is the relation between your dreams and your facts?
I think I've been speaking about science and fiction. So science fiction is for me not a bad word. We have been speaking about it also a little bit a while ago, where fiction turns into science or facts, and it's about the future. It's about so science fiction is all what we can imagine and dream about the future and try to construct it. So that is what I would like to add to this word game that we are trying to find in order to describe, as you perfectly said, what is the target of, or to say this collective target of the planet, and to make that more clear. If Peter asks, what is you, or maybe our utopia in that way, then I think you have seen a lot today on utopian desires that are in these presentations. Yeah. It is about a planet as a kind of spaceship that we would like to understand, to give that or it's in climatic terms, or it's in social or political terms, or it's in economical terms, that somehow to understand that. Yes, there is an ideology, I think, in a lot of us, also in what I would call the diversity of the planet, or a love for, if it's biodiversity, but a diversity of situations, or a diversity of solutions that are needed to get one step further, which is also, I think, highly utopian as it is practical in the end to combine. Yes, there's, I think, also an enormous dream here this afternoon, on greenness somehow, or to live with greenness, or to construct that in its almost 60s way, is what we are trying to celebrate. And maybe we have not discussed enough about, say, and that's a very European part of it, that there is also an intense, say, belief in democracy on urban plans, also explicitly shown in the New York plan, or in some of our plans, or explicitly shown in approaches that maybe we should share. We love somehow democracy, and and last but not least, and maybe that can express also more in some of the works that I've seen today, there is also not a preoccupation on architecture, but there is a desire for freedom by making every project different, and by giving that also to others, and to giving it away somehow. So here maybe some words for you, Peter, to what is this this contemporary painting of utopia. And so you see words to end with that are maybe born in the 60s somehow, and that after, say, 50 years, that we do have, with our technologies, with our globalism and cosmopolitanism, that we maybe can make it a little bit work, that those inventors of the 60s that somehow in the 70s up to the zeros started to decay and made indeed also products that were to the contrary of what I have said before. So maybe this year you find a kind of generation that have looked at it and that take those things for a next step and try to construct it in all its diverse means. And so thank you, Peter, for that, for maybe describing it a while ago on that generation that is somehow now maybe coming back in that way, in its most glorious way.
I suppose that Bjarke also feels, sympathetic to this idea of utopia, but a utopia that can be made real.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think the challenge that some of the big thinkers had in the 60s and 70s was was actually the idea of utopia, that it was like this sort of universal application of a single perfect ideology, which and that's like why any perfectly realized utopia would feel like hell, because it would be like a tyranny of sort of a monotheistic mono-ideology, and I think that's why we came up with the term pragmatic utopia, which is the idea that you can, every time you have to do something within what's in your sphere of influence, you can try to make that as good as you can possibly imagine. So that means that every time you make an intervention, it's utopia realized, but step by step, or like block by block. And I think, and in that sense, like we rarely put forward like really big visions, but more like sort of a set of examples of ways of dealing with the world that where each little story tells a story about a bigger attitude, but it's not like a universal answer that fits all, because that's what gave us, housing projects, like everything that Jean-Philippe Vassal has been doing is somehow cleaning up after that kind of universal answer to the same question, whereas each and every situation has a slightly different answer to the same question.
But I do think that you are also prototypical. So that somehow, and I think we share that when there's an invention on one specific plot, that you can also use it at other plots.
For sure.
Maybe and I think that's also a good thing, because then it means basically that we use every building somehow to give it a larger impact, or that it could be like used at more elements. Don't you agree with that?
I totally agree with that, but I think the thing is that if you take that exact same, because we've tried also to recycle certain ideas. I mean, if there's one thing that any architect has, he has a giant graveyard of lost competitions and lost commissions. So and we try to sometimes resurrect, a corpse from the graveyard, but we always find that even if we are like stubbornly hell-bent on just making the same building again, it adapts to the different situations, and even though we try to resist it, it ends up actually becoming a different building, a different idea. So I think...
I Dietmar wanted to make a point on this.
Oh, on this. Look, I don't agree on this thinking that there have been too many successful big thinkers in the 60s. And I don't agree absolutely that these big thinkers will have the opportunity to develop a future. And I think especially what we heard today a little bit also in the morning, where Lisa Hutton said that the ugly word participation, not too much participation, but in science, it is very clear that the development of ideas is not related to one person anymore. And so we're a little bit the exotic branch, you know, that we still believe in this, maybe through media development during the last 30 years to do these pronunciations of individuals, you know. I think somebody said yesterday or today the ideas of the stars is a little bit gone in architecture, and there will be other developments. And sure, we can talk now that we believe in this kind of future, but that's what I don't do. That's what I don't do, especially when I don't want to generate form in a democratic way. No, that's not possible, you know. But I want to generate the ideas, and that's all of us has to have a lot of ideas, not based on architecture alone anymore, that these kind of processes, they will influence our discipline much more. So this argument about the big thinkers, for me, long ago.
That's funny, because I see a certain kind of contradiction in what you say in your two answers. Because on one hand, you started, I think, today already with like discussing what is the vision on the planet. Somehow you raised that point. And you, in the second element, you say, of course, we cannot contribute as one single person. And you focus, or you emphasize then the moment of like somehow bottom up, and somehow many ideas that come. I do think that those two can work together much more, and that we and your plaidoyer, you played to have somehow to talk about the big thinking somehow, how to construct it is that goes through gigantic amount of details, a gigantic amount of influences, and I am very happy with this momentum in time, because we are more accessible, we can access more data. We can access the complete laboratory of the ETH and other domains. That there is an intense, say, ping-pong game goes on to improve situations, and that makes it quite rapid in that way. And that's, say, this movement of technical and say other innovations are now more to us, and that it makes it us more able to deal with larger components. So maybe that spans a bridge between the two elements that you say, on thinking on the planet and constructing it with a majority of small elements. I think that is what we're now today discussing about, and how to mobilize that. And that is, I think, the challenge. Actually, I find it fascinating. These days, the word inventor and the inventors are more sexy than ever. Yeah. And they are, if they're designers, they invent something in their garages now, in Eindhoven, in Lausanne, then suddenly they become the hype and the new, our new heroes. I'm very happy with that moment in time.
Vicente wants to add something on that, and now we need not translate him.
Perdón otra vez por hablar en castellano. No, yo creo que hay un sueño, una utopía omnicomprensiva, que es, digamos, el deseo, por la cercanía en que vemos que se están produciendo las cosas, de que el sistema capitalista, imite a la naturaleza, ¿no? Convierta las basuras en energía, como en La Coruña, que la energía que se obtiene de la quema de las basuras da luz a la ciudad, que es como si fuera la metáfora de una transformación. Creo que la ecología no es solamente un respeto o un cuidado sobre lo que persiste para que no caigamos en una situación precaria, sino también un modelo que, de otra parte, no lo estoy diciendo por primera vez, lo he visto en algunas publicaciones norteamericanas defendiendo el capitalismo, ese capitalismo que se mimetiza con la naturaleza, ¿no? Y hace, bueno, pues esa democracia en la que no hay jerarquías, en ese comportamiento que no crea desperdicios, en esa explotación que no arruina. En fin, en pocas palabras, creo que la utopía es ese sueño de que el sistema de producción imite al sistema de comportamiento de la naturaleza, ¿no?
I imagine Peter may want to add something on that.
I don't know what he said. So.
Oh, you don't have. He was the only one who didn't get earphones. Sorry. So we'll escape you this time.
Actually, yeah,
No,
I
but
want to
maybe.
say, like, since we're talking about nature, and there was the point about society imitating nature, and I think Dietmar had this statement that he cared about facts. He didn't care about dreams or whatever. Like, or we were free to dream, but you didn't give a fucking shit. But and I think that one thing that one should not forget is that if you look at nature and the sort of the wonderful diversity, the biodiversity of form, color, shape, texture, etc., that you find in nature is a product of Darwinian evolution. And Darwinian evolution has a lot of utilitarian selection criteria where simply if certain things don't perform well, then they die before they reproduce. And if there's like, so therefore, the neck of the giraffe is because then that species could eat like slightly higher located plants than the other animals, and so on and so forth. But there's also a massive element of primarily, like there's a lot of factors, but the major one, which was the true controversy when Darwin proposed it, was a female mating preference. Is that a lot of the colors on the fish, on the butterflies, the peacock is a famous example, have no real purpose apart from they were preferred by the females. So simply the peacock that has a more colorful and bigger tail, he gets to kiss all the girls, and therefore he has more offspring. We shouldn't forget that part of creation is, of course, the hard performance of certain things, but there's always moments where you can go left or right. And I think, for instance, I went to your office building in Switzerland, right into on the border in Austria. That it's a beautiful building, incredibly nice to move around in. The deep, sort of almost medieval window frames. It's really a joy, and I think when you see the projects you presented today, you probably have certain things you like more, certain buildings you dream about more than other buildings. Because I mean, it's quite clear that I have a feeling you like orthogonal, right? It would be a lie to say that it's only about facts, because at the end of the day, there's always a moment where within these parameters you can go left or you can go right. And I think we can all see that Louisa, she likes color and curves, and I think that the world is a richer place for it. So I think it's just within all the ideas and the tools, the facts, the technologies that we can mobilize. At the end of the day, there's also a choice, and it's also interesting, sort of. And I love that fact, because that even no matter how rational and objective we try to be in our encounter with the city regulations and the economy and the clients and the users, what we do still becomes an expression of who we are.
So Dietmar, you must answer that.
Okay, no, but maybe there was a misunderstanding. I didn't say it. I don't like. Look, I think for me, facts are the things which already became real. And to understand them, and behind them, I think I told in the morning, that I believe the biggest resource is all the liking, the mentality, the thinking, the feeling of people, And I'm sorry, I'm also one of them. So I'm also allowed to have that. Yeah, maybe sometimes I don't talk about them in advance. Afterwards, I cannot explain what I do when I would explain not what I like. It's a lot of things. It's only relation to what you like, only to make this clear. So that's not a big...
Now the conversation has turned to English, so I can ask Peter to intervene. Maybe I can give you a clue. You were here when Rincon has mentioned Superstudio as a reference. No, you were also mentioning utopias and the utopias of the 50s and 60s as something that comes again alive. But of course, utopias have this totalitarian dark side. What do you think, Peter?
Yes, I agree with that. I mean, my question, I suppose, was behind the dreams of what they're doing is a kind of changing relationship with the world, with the nature, with the self. I mean, modernity, the world was a resource to be used. Now, a lot of people say, no, we must just immerse ourselves in nature, which is, kind of, if you like, modernity was kind of like an adolescent thing, you know, denying our dependencies. Now a lot of people say just immerse ourselves in nature, which is, for me, an infantilism. But when I meant, you know, what kind of relationship, because I think actually we're being asked to become adults and enter into a dialogue with nature, which in a way you see in your work. And I just didn't know how much it was conscious. And the point you made about evolution, I mean, more and more the view of evolution is that the world is being constantly reborn all the time. The creativity in nature is extraordinary. I mean, epigenetics and so on stresses that even more than the Darwinian vision. And our times are calling for us to think about a different relationship with the larger world, which will affect architecture profoundly.
Realmente, si uno repasa las diferentes disciplinas, los diferentes, digamos, modos de entender la vida y demás, yo creo que no he visto hablar de utopía con más claridad que en la arquitectura. Quizá en el ejercicio de las funciones nuevas de la arquitectura se está representando un avance de lo que pudiera ser un ejemplar para otras disciplinas.
Muchas de las grandes utopías históricas tenían planos,
sí,
y que venían acompañadas de cómo iba a ser aquella ciudad.
Sí, las utopías esas que respetamos tanto murieron en el siglo XX, todas ellas, ¿no?
Sí, sí. No, pero yo estoy hablando de las del siglo XVI y XVII
bueno,
y XVIII, que venían, digamos, con planos, es decir, que no eran solamente textos escritos, sino textos acompañados de imaginaciones, a fin de cuentas, urbanas, ¿no? Y arquitectónicas.
Sí.
Pero, en fin, no podemos largarnos eternamente, pero voy a pediros a cada uno de vosotros lo que llaman un final statement. I'm going to ask you for a final statement. Sorry, I keep changing it. Vicente, you are making my life more difficult. Because I never know which language to use. No, I think it's already late. We have a party now at the Muga Hotel where you are all invited, and we cannot go to the party at 11 o'clock at night. So we'll have to start winding up this with a final statement, and I'll start from left to right. Give me a summary, a soundbite.
A soundbite.
I'll keep you, Vicente.
Sí. Bueno, a mí me parece que los que han, digamos, han hecho augurios o han preconizado ordenaciones del mundo han sido sobre todo los artistas, ¿no? La creatividad de los artistas. Y en las artes hay unas que van por delante de las otras. La música suele ser la última que se incorpora y la pintura la primera. Pero ahora, viendo lo que veo, creo que la arquitectura se encuentra en la vanguardia de todas las creatividades posibles que suscitan las artes, ¿no?
No, pues es importante esa opinión como observador que eres de tantas artes. No.
Diles lo que he dicho.
Dietmar. No, he has a, he has a, ahora lo tiene, lo sabe.
I'm sorry about being a little bit more careful, Mr. V.Verdú, utopian. You should say, I always think about that we have in the 20th century 2 people who had big utopias written down and killed 70 million people. You know, so I'm very, very careful about this. And therefore, I think I really like intentions to go, making very clear, following very precisely but I don't like at all this totalitarian approach of a utopian idea. And that's the reason why I'm so careful about this.
I feel sympathy for your approach. Winnie, you are the more utopian of us all here on the platform?
I see I can fully understand that the word utopia is maybe connected to a certain kind of way of thinking in the past, and that somehow that has this kind of totalitarian black sides here when it's too simple and when it's too much somehow top down in that way. I completely agree with it. Having said that, I do think that there is an incredible, say, desire in the world to think about the future. I haven't seen more films about futurism than ever before the last 5 years. I haven't seen more people that somehow artists that want to construct about, think about futures. I have seen so much work by many people, by documentary makers, that somehow when making a documentary they think already of a next step. And I sense after an epoch of doom, like in the 90s and in the zeros, where because of fear you were not allowed to make things, I feel more curiosity in this on the planet. And I think that's what I want to live for. Because if there's no curiosity and no desire for the future, then it's better to stop and to bring yourself back and down into lethargy somewhere in an Italian mountain. So I really am enthusiastic about that. And maybe that translates the word, utopia into a more contemporary, definition of translation for that, which is much more believable and gathers these aspects of pluriformity or of diversity into a prospect and into somehow visions. Let's not forget that despite all this, we need leadership sometimes to overcome the splinteredness that is also maybe over there. And Dietmar, if you're not doing it, then I'll take it over. Huh? That's what they say.
So no longer top-down utopias, but rather anticipating the future. So, Bjarke.
I mean, I'm obviously also quite optimistic about the whole thing, despite the failure of democracy right now to pick the right leaders consistently across Europe and now my home country. But I think what's quite excited in the field, in the physical realm, is that I do think that after like 3 decades maybe where the most exciting stuff has been digital or virtual or immaterial, and you know, like where the most value has been created, where all the focus has been, I think there is now a return to physical space. And I think even with virtual reality sort of invading every single film festival these days, there's already like a much more blatant interface between the virtual and the physical. And then I think with Silicon Valley and the optimism and the entrepreneurship that has created these like major concentrations of wealth are now being, that kind of courage is now being channeled into the physical realm. So you're seeing like, I don't think it's super exciting, but I think as an identifier, I think the fact that WeWorks, which is basically an overvalued rental office company, is valued now at $16 billion, which means, and it's just a real estate developer, or it's even a property manager, that's what it is. It would not be worth anything if it wasn't somehow associated with IT. But I think the fact that that kind of omnipotence is now getting into the physical realm means that you will have a very, very risk-willing, entrepreneurial, like utopian kind of ambition being channeled into material research, into you already see it with cars and space exploration, and I think we're going to see as architects that our field is again going to be the frontier where some of the most interesting discoveries are being made. I think, in the next decade or two.
Well, you heard Vicente, that he said that architecture was the more creative of any fields that he is in contact with. Would you like to make a final? Yeah.
A quick soundbite, because actually I endorse what Björk has been saying very much, but I like also the expression he used, a hedonistic sustainability. I'm sorry I introduced the word utopia. Maybe I should have used the word visionary or so on, because I didn't mean it in historic consequence. I just meant a dream. But I think that his notion of a hedonistic sustainability, which means an engagement with the physical world, a sensual engagement, an intellectual engagement, and so on. We've had enough of a guilt trip. We know the mess we're in, but we're crippled when we're only looking at the mess and the problems. We do need a much more enjoyable vision of the future, of engaging the world in a different way.
And those were very wise words, Peter, as always. And it's been an amazing session. But before you go, there is one word that you were going to use in your presentation and didn't.
Yes.
And empathy.
Yes.
Would you have a final word about empathy? Because we are discussing hedonistic, the return to the physical, but what about the missing word?
Yes, okay, it's good. I mean, I was going to save it until I have it more figured out. But I recently had a conversation with Brian Eno where he, because I think I brought up empathy, and then he said, yeah, like people like empathic people, not just because they feel like they're understood, but actually because empathy is a form of creativity. And he didn't say more than that, so I've just been chewing on it, because I mean, I always had the feeling that of all the skills that you might require as an architect, empathy will be your superpower. And I always felt it like, because like the Danish word for empathy is actually medfølelse, which is more like, which means with feeling, and it's more like compassion, but we have a different word for compassion, which is with suffering, actually, for some reason. But actually what empathy is, it's a very high form of creativity, because it's actually not that you feel what the other one is feeling, but it's actually that you proactively try to put yourself in the other person's situation and look at the world through their eyes, with their records, and that actually opens up your mind to perspectives that are not yours, but that you're somehow like channeling from the person you are engaged with. And therefore, I think empathism would be the ultimate ism, because as an architect, you're rarely designing your own house. And I spent the last 9 months refurbishing my own place in New York, and I am the worst client, my God. But we always try to create the framework for other people's lives, and therefore empathy becomes this amazing resource of opening your mind to other people's minds, opening your mind to other people's ideas. But it's not a fully formed thought yet, so that's why I'll exclusively lecture on empathy the next time, I promise.
Well, that you're also expanding the other person's mind by getting fully into it.
Sí. No, yo quiero decir que lo que dice Björk, por una parte, pues es una visión deseable, ¿no? Pero por otro lado, es necesaria, ¿no? Que el mundo es tan complejo que bueno, pues no cabía, por muy grande que fuera la cabeza de Emilio Botín, ni cabe en la cabeza de Bill Gates, por lo visto. Necesita equipos de gentes distintas. Esa incorporación de la mujer a las decisiones es porque también aporta, desde el punto de vista productivo, puntos de vista diferentes. Bueno, que el Open Mind tiene que ver precisamente con la necesidad de entender un mundo más complejo, más lleno de diversidades y de problemas que no se habían a lo mejor detectado tan intensamente como ahora, ¿no?
Pues con esa defensa de la empatía, with this defense of empathy, vamos a acabar este congreso, pero no sin que antes pida a los patronos presentes y a los otros participantes y mentores, claro que vamos, relatores que suban al escenario. Así que para una última presentación, Richard, por favor. Adelante, Pozo, Pachi, subir todos. Ya sabéis que siempre acabamos los congresos así. Sí, claro, todo el equipo organizador que esté por aquí, porque no, me deslumbran los focos y no sé si están o están cerca, pero si no, los quiero aquí en el escenario, aunque no los veo. Pues sí, Gina también, Laura, no sé dónde están. Por favor, si queda alguien de los organizadores o de los participantes, que suba, y si no, ya nos despedimos así de todos vosotros. Muchas gracias, ha sido una sesión extraordinaria. Gracias a todos.